We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Today is my day, a brand new beginning.
Welcome. This is Susan Levin at Talk Up Your Biz, Speak Your Way to More Profits, with my co-host,
Jean-Noel, Bassior.
And we are at LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk. And we're so happy to be with you today, April 1st, April Fool's Day. Did anybody fool you? Nobody fooled me yet. We have some great guests on the show today, and our first guest will be the wonderful Wendy Hammers, who's an actress, writer, creator, and host of Tasty Words. And she's also an author and a speaker. She's got a lot of credits to her name. And our second guest will be...
It's Devin Hughes, and he's going to be joining us by Skype. And Devin has written a book about growing up in a biracial environment, and it's called Contrast, a biracial man's journey to desegregate his past. So we're looking forward to having him on in the second segment.
So what's in the news today? We always like to talk about breaking news at Speaker Services. And Susan, I'm always doing the research here. So we wanted to talk to you today about several things. And the first thing that we wanted to talk about was about writing your book and storytelling. So you want to bring us up to date on that?
Well, of course, I'm starting a show called The Book Beat on May 6th, and that's going to focus a lot on the changing world of publishing. And it really is changing because it's possible for anyone, virtually anyone, to have a book these days. And the thing is, you want to have a good book. So we're going to update you on how to make that happen. And we're also going to interview authors who have a book, whether it's self-published or mainstream. So that's going to come up May 6th. But, it comes up in our work together with Speaker Services a lot, because a lot of the people we work with are authors. And storytelling is coming back, right? It's big these days now.
Well, storytelling has always been around. One of the ways we mentioned last week is that we have a client who we've been working with, who Jean-Noel was helping shape up her book, because Jean-Noel is a book coach, and she told her that she should start with a story, and it made such a big impact on the way that she's creating the book.
Because sometimes when people don't know how to write a book, they kind of do the first draft, which is great, which means you set things down. And a lot of people, do that chronologically. And what you really want to aim for, or one possibility, is to start each chapter with a story. And that's very much like you would do in your speaking presentations as well. But that's one of the things mainstream does, is we really use storytelling, right, to get you into even breaking news. You've got breaking news in mainstream. Yeah. That's going to be pretty much the 5 W's: the who, what, where, why, when. But even in a feature story, even if it's about a war that's going on, usually you'll notice that the author, the journalist, will open with a human interest story. And so that's what we're encouraging you as an author to become aware of. So if you're writing a book, you can do that, and also for speaking, right?
Right,
Susan?
And if you're speaking, and I was coaching somebody today who happens to be an author who will be on the Book Beat in May, on how to use stories in her presentation. And I must have said this a million times, but I'll share it with you. When you do a talk that is about an hour, you only can do 3 points in an hour. And what you support your point with the story. So you tell people, it's very subliminal. You might be talking about your book and holding up your book and saying, in chapter 5, I want to read to you about somebody that I coached, and then tell the story. Or you might even do something like, when I worked with so-and-so, she came to me and she was in such bad shape and she had so much pain. And she was losing her family. Her husband was divorcing her. She wasn't sleeping. But let's say she's a hypnotherapist. And as a hypnotherapist or a therapist, I was able to give her several tips on how she could have a healing, or how she could manage her time better. And each week I checked back in with her, and we found that each week she made major steps. So it's about the pain and the gain. So when you're out speaking, the meeting planners want to know what's in it for their audience. What are the people going to learn, and what are they going to take away? So by her telling this story as part of one of her points, she's telling us that she's an expert in this subject. Listen, folks who are speakers, tell the story, and then people get the idea that you are the expert and you made this happen, and maybe they have a sister or brother or a husband who needs your help without you saying, I'm the best thing since sliced bread. So that's another way that you tell stories.
Now, when you say make 3 points in an hour, what do you mean exactly by 3 points, really? Because it seems like you'd have more time than that. Like, how are you going to fill all that space?
Well, you tell your point, and then you tell your story, and then you involve the audience. And the audience remembers about 95% more about what you're speaking about when they become part of that process. So they could turn to a person, you could set up an exercise, if say, turn to the person next to you, and you each have 1 minute to say what your fears are, and share with each other, and then you process them out. They'll remember a lot more, because then that gives you more, it makes you more of a facilitator than being a talking head.
And so you're participating also. The speaker's giving you an opportunity to participate.
And participate, you learn from each other.
And,
but yeah, go ahead.
Well, we encourage people to get out there and be the expert that you are, because even if you just run a small business and you've been doing that for years, you might be an expert in some little known thing that a lot of people really do want to know more about.
Right.
And so I meet people like this, we both do. And even if you haven't written a book, you can still start to get out there and speak. And a lot of times, Susan's really the expert on speaking, but a lot of times people say to me, I've never spoken in public before. And I always say, make it interactive. Open, when I teach or when I speak, I try to ask the audience questions because it sets me at ease. So that's just one way of getting out there, getting into a talk and making yourself feel more at ease, because you'd be surprised when it becomes interactive, then it's not like you're up there and you have to perform.
Right. And throw away the PowerPoint, because that's a crutch. Don't use that. Just speak from the heart. Be authentic. That's what we say. And if you're just starting out for the first time, that's okay if you make mistakes, because you have to practice, and you'll get better at it. It's always an easier thing to do. But you know what I wanted to talk about today also is, the news media, they're looking for certain things from the people, from the authors and from the speakers. And there was a post in the New Media San Francisco Book Review recently, and they had 50 tips on what the reporters want from the speakers and the authors. And I have a few of them with me today, and it's on my blog also. You can go to speakerservices.com and click on the blog, and you'll find that information there too, or through social media. I'm all over social media, Susan Levin Speaker Services. So one of the things, and
you
these
are really
things...
all over social media.
Oh yeah,
everybody in the studio is agreeing here.
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the things that people ask us all the time is, what do the reporters want? What do the media want? And those are the questions that we're asking them too, especially if they want to be interviewed on the book beat, especially because we're finding that they don't have all their ducks lined up in a row. So what's one of the things that you think about?
Well, I mean, my background is as a journalist, and one of the things that you should be conscious of if you're an author is what's called a news peg. And that means that you can peg what you've written about, your area of expertise, even if you don't have a book. But if you do, your book or your speaking to a news story or something that's on the national stage. And that's what we look for in mainstream media. Because for many years I wrote for magazines like Woman's World and McCall's and things like that. And I did celebrity interviews, but the thing is, you couldn't just go out and say, like, I can get an interview with this or that celebrity. The celebrity would have to have a film or a book, or there would have to be something relevant that was going to happen, something that was going to be in the news. And the news media is very selective that way. Usually when there's a feature story, sometimes you discover something that people don't know about, and that creates the news, and that creates pegs in the future. Right. And so, but if you're an expert, pay attention to what is on the national stage. And you can start to email talk show producers and let them know that you might have something interesting to say, something that's going to add to the conversation. A lot of times, unfortunately, it's a tragedy. So we have, for example, a client in Atlanta, and he calls himself the anger guy. Well, in the news, there's been a string of unfortunate things, of tragedies.
A lot of bookings,
yeah. And he specializes in anger, why men get angry. And so, this guy could be, he's a very popular guy with the news media because people have questions the day after a tragedy. Now, that's too soon. You don't want to, he's not going to approach them then. Because that's too soon. But when you get to the point where people do start asking questions, they're trying to figure out what happened here, what's the profile, then that's where you as an expert may have some knowledge that will fit in. So you want to make sure that talk show producers and editors and reporters know about you. And so there's a lot of different resources for that, but start paying attention. How can you peg what you do to what's happening?
And that ties into, your book needs to tie into what's newsworthy. And that's very helpful, what's current. And let me give you a couple of the other things that they mentioned in the San Francisco book review. They said, and we know this too, you only contact them if the book is relevant to what they cover. That's a big no-no that a lot of people do because they don't do the research. And we see the same thing happening with speakers when they're contacting organizations or associations and they haven't researched. And then they say, I didn't get any callbacks. Nobody wanted to talk to me. And then we also know, we ask them what was their pitch, which should be about 15 seconds, the niche pitch, or or in 2 sentences, and it's flat, and they don't speak to it. And you want to reach them. Number 3, they say something that is actually new to report. They don't want old news. To never receive a voicemail unless it's truly about an A-list author. There were 50 of these. I just chose a few.
And some of those you can't match. I mean, not all of us, have our A-list authors, that sort of thing. But what you have to pay attention to are angles. Because the thing is, you may have a book out that has nothing to do with what's happening on the national stage, but you have to think of new angles. For example, let's say you've written a book about how to be more conscious as you do business. Now, that was a new thing about 20 years ago, and now there's like 50,000 books out about that. So what you need is a new slant, a new angle. That's where you get to be really creative. I would say, go to the bookstore if you can find a bookstore. Go to Amazon. Go to both, because it's really good to actually pick up real books that if you can find them. And just think, how does your book fit in? Does your book take the next step? What is there about your book that's really different or new? And that's what you're going to pitch. Even if you've got a lot of stuff that the other books cover, you got to hone in on what you have that's different.
By the way, BTW, the book coach over here also can help you with that, with media coaching. And together we can help you if you need your story angles and you need to get focused. I mean, whether you're a speaker or an author, we're here to help you. So get a hold of us at Susan, SUSAN, at speakerservices.com. Website is speakerservices.com, where we've been supporting professional people and authors and experts and entrepreneurs for the last 21 years who want to grow their business and income through speaking. We're here to inspire you and to educate you, and we want you to be able to do the same if you're an expert. Hey, Jean-Noel, talking about social media, our friend Annie Jennings, who's a PR person and now has an online magazine that's fabulous. It's called PR Wire, that Annie Jennings puts out. Did a roundup the other day on how speakers and bureaus use LinkedIn to get gigs. And you know what? She asked me to write a piece for it.
Yeah, you
And-
should, because you are an expert at that. you you are shameless in your social media approach. You really, really are. But you use LinkedIn really, really well.
I do, and I love LinkedIn because that's where I get a lot of business, and it's so easy to connect with the business people in your target market.
And that's the most professional, wouldn't you say, of the
I would
social
say
networks?
so. But Google Plus is really coming up.
That's true.
Also.
Yeah.
Pay attention to Google Plus. I really enjoy that, and I'm learning how to use that. And last week we talked about Google Hangouts too, which Jean-Noel and I are learning, and we're using Google Drive, which is fabulous too, because then we can work together on the same document. They have a lot of great apps there. So some of the things, the list is very long. Again, it's on my blog, and you can find it through speakerservices.com. Just click on the blog for the roundup. But some of the things that she talked about was that people submitted was for LinkedIn, show off, but don't use brute force. You know, sometimes people just assume that, you know them and that you're going to want to do business with them. But I like this one. Think of LinkedIn as your public relations agent.
That's a good one.
Very nice. And that's the way it works for me, if you know how to work it. Highlight what others say about you on LinkedIn. Very important. Hey, did you hear what this person said? Or share it on other groups that you're in. And she says, or she, not she, but the people who put these in, the key to making magic happen and unfold is to network. And I understand what that means. I have a group on LinkedIn called Speaker Services. You're welcome to join. And I belong to 49 other groups.
Because the limit is 50.
50, right. I just got rid of a few and added some more. But I post things around because people are interested in it. And then also another tip was showcase yourself by joining the groups. That's where you meet the people. That's where you can connect with them. And my big saucy secret is that when somebody invites you to LinkedIn on a group, or you join a group and you see somebody that's new, send them a note and say, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. Can we talk? And most people say, yes, we can talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Because people, I think, actually miss talking or want to talk eventually, despite the appearance that nobody talks anymore.
Right.
But, sometimes there's a few steps before you talk. And that's what you do so well, is you join groups on LinkedIn, right? And you comment on the groups, you make comments, right?
Yes.
Without selling yourself, without doing it with that. And pretty soon, how does it get to a phone call?
It gets to a phone call by me offering a complimentary session with them, or can we talk to each other about collaborating or learning more about their business.
And that's where you find that they're pretty receptive, right?
Very receptive.
Okay.
People are happy to talk. I can't tell you how many wonderful people I've met all over the country. And now sometimes I'm even meeting them in person when they come to LA, which is fantastic for us. I really, really like that. So it's all good. So that's about it on LinkedIn for today. And I always say, speak your way to more business, y'all.
I know we're coming up to a break now.
We are.
And, yeah. And so...
But I don't hear any music.
We don't hear the music yet, but we will shortly. So we're going to take...
Who's playing the music? We forgot to say that.
Yes, our friend Lena Marquez has written this song called The Seed Song, which opened the show and which we're using for all of our bumper music. And she's a really talented musician, and it's a beautiful song. So stay tuned. We're just going to take a short break, and we're coming back with Wendy Hammers, who Susan was talking about before. If you are in the creative community in LA, you know this name. She is called the Pied Piper for one woman and one man shows. She shows you how to do that. She's a coach. Her own show called Ripe is getting critical acclaim. And she's going to be joining us. Yes, you've seen that. She's going to be joining us after the break.
Ready to change the world that I see. 'Cause I have a dream. True love is evergreen. I know it's not too late. Gonna grow some love today. Planting a seed to build
can do incredible things. They made every sound in this piece of music. But nothing compares to using them to help save a life. If an adult suddenly collapses, call 911, then push hard and fast in the center of their chest until help arrives. It's called hands-only CPR, and it's recommended by the American Heart Association. Visit handsonlycpr.org today. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
Oh, your skin looks great.
Thank you.
What's your secret?
Frankincense and myrrh oil by Ancient Essence.
Frankincense and myrrh oil by Ancient Essence?
Yes, it's a beauty secret used since the time of the Greeks and Romans. The spa in Malibu told me about frankincense and myrrh by Ancient Essence, and now my skin is lovely.
Well, your skin looks great.
Call Ancient Essence at 1-800-627-9813. Discover the secret of beautiful skin. Call 1-800-627-9813. Discover the secret. Frankincense and myrrh oil by Ancient Essence. Discover the secret of beautiful skin. Available at fine spas and beauty centers.
Hi, this is Starlet Quarles, and I'm inviting you to join us every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. for a new show right here on LA Talk Live, The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People. Join us as we discuss the topics that are relevant to today's generational leaders. So don't forget to tune in to The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People, every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. right here on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Today is my day, a brand new beginning. The future will blossom magnificently.
Welcome back to Talk Up Your Biz, Speak Your Way to More Profits on LA Talk Live, where we are more than just talk. And I'm here, Jean-Noel Bassior, with my co-host, Susan Levin. And our guest this segment is Wendy Hammers.
Hello.
And she does an incredible one-woman show called Ripe, which is gaining lots of critical acclaim here in Los Angeles. And Susan, you've seen the show, right?
I saw the show Ripe, and Wendy was incredible.
Thank
And
you.
by the way, I met Wendy through our friend who we interviewed last week, Deborah Kagan. And she said, you have to come to the show. What I love about the show that Wendy produced and acted in and wrote in, it had a wonderful story about it. And it was about self-esteem. And now she's taking it out on the road. And she's doing it in New York and some other places. And she's going to tell us in a moment about it. But she also is starting to speak about it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I wanted her to come on the show today. Because young people, old people, middle-aged people need to know about it. Plus, she does every month, if you're in LA or in the Valley, she does something called Tasty Words, which she's been doing for a long time. And her shows are marvelous. I love them. And I'm going next Thursday on the 11th of April to see it, and it's about random acts of kindness. So welcome to the show.
Thank
Wendy.
you.
We're so happy to have
Thank you.
It's
It's
such
my
a
new
joy.
hired AH and my new PR woman here. I love everything you said.
I could be.
Well,
Thank
and I
you.
want to add that you've been on The Sopranos.
I have.
Yeah, and Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Curb Your Enthusiasm, so much fun.
Yeah,
the most fun I've ever had illegally on television was working with Larry David.
That
Unbelievable.
was a great. You can on YouTube. There's a great excerpt from. There's a great clip from the Curb Your Enthusiasm, right?
We had a lot of fun doing that show.
that
Yes,
was
it's
great.
on. It's on there. It's on my
She
website.
watched it.
It's on. I
Yeah.
know she told me.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun to work with talented people who give you license to do what you do. To, as you ladies were talking about, use your authentic voice. I mean, I don't know if you realize that, but Curb Your Enthusiasm is not scripted. And when you arrive for the audition, they hand you a piece of paper the size of what would be inside a fortune cookie, and it has a one-liner, and he says, "Okay, now go, just have fun with it."
Yeah, you were an airline
Ticket counter attendant.
right? And on that strip of paper it said what?
Whatever you do, don't let me get on the plane, and just give me a word I can't say here.
And that was Larry David. That was Larry
Yes.
David telling you
And he
that,
said,
right?
the worse you make me look, the funnier the show is. Just have a great time. So,
Well,
yeah,
that's
pretty
perfect
brilliant.
for you because you're excellent at
Well,
that.
thank
You know
you.
how to have a good time.
That I do. That I do.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying such kind things about Ripe. I am going to start a tour in the fall. November is our first. We're looking at Kansas City and St. Louis. And then we go to Florida for the Jews, Fabulous Jews Everywhere, 5 dates in January of 2014. And many other cities as well. So excited.
Tell us what Ripe is about. Is it about feeling more comfortable in your body and with who you are?
I would say if I had to give you a one-liner, it is a celebration of life. And basically, I work with writers. One of the things I do is I work with writers and help people find their stories and pull their stories out of them for solo shows, for books, for various things. And one of the things I tell them is when good things happen in your life, we all want good things to happen, right? So when good things happen, that's fantastic. But when bad things happen, really one of the only good things about bad things is you get a good story out of it. Like if you can't, if it's going to go badly, at least get the story. So Ripe is a result of a tragedy. A dear friend of mine passed away, a fantastic woman. She was 46 years old. Her name was Judy Toll, one of the funniest people who ever walked the face of the earth. She was a groundling, and she was a writer on Sex and the City, and she was just a bright, sparkling light. And she passed away at such a young age. It was a wake-up call for me, and which is a lot of times when we lose somebody, that's what wakes us up to our own life, and it forced me to look at things, right? Unfortunately, it takes that. And so I re-examined my life, and it became the beginning of the end of my marriage because I realized I wasn't happy, and he wasn't happy, and we deserved better. And I actually felt in my gut that it was an insult to my friend to stay in a marriage that wasn't wonderful because I had choices. She didn't have choices anymore. She wasn't here anymore.
But what an incredible gift she gave you.
She did, indeed, and continues to. But like really, when
chills.
you think about it, like when you have a life, you might as well go and live it. And so a lot of the message of Ripe is to celebrate these precious lives we have. And especially as women, we get caught up a lot. Not that men are immune to this, but women especially get caught up in what do we look like? What is the outside, this vehicle we're running around in? What does it look like? And at the end of the day, that can't be all that we're here for. It certainly isn't. And, at the end, when she was dying, all the time we spent worrying about our cellulite and the size of our stomach, she just would have been happy to be in any body and be alive and well. So that's a lot of what the story is about. But it's funny. It's really funny. And I wrote it as a series of monologues, like my elbows wanted to write, my breasts wanted to write, my tush wanted to write. Like I just wrote these stories from my different body parts, and it's a dance. And that's how I do it.
I saw you dancing, on the clip on YouTube. And were you trained, or is this just all kind
I have been dancing since I was a little girl, and I still do hip hop every week, 3 times a week. I dance. Yes, I dance. I think that anybody, especially writers who are stationary a great deal of the time and isolated, right? It's a solitary act unless you're writing with a writing partner. And it's a lot of sitting still at your computer and your shoulders becoming Mount Rushmore. So I tell people, set a timer. Every 15 minutes, get up, shoulder rolls, move your body around. We don't want any carpal tunnel in our writers, right? So, but I think moving your body, what does Tony Robbins say? If you want to change your state, if you want to change your mind, to change your physical state. And it really is something to moving your body that's crucial for life force.
Yeah, and this message is so prevalent now because we're noticing that a lot of people are choosing not to be here anymore, and others are staying, and so it's so inspirational in the way that you tell it, and being able to do it through the play and also to speak to people in front of groups is really fabulous, because these young girls, they start out so young, as many of us were, as you were telling. You showed in the play, how you didn't like your butt. I love that part where you turn around and.
Yes, I refer to myself as the Jewish J-Lo. I'm Julo, Beyonce. But yes, we have a lot of pressure in our culture to fit into a very narrow idea about what our bodies are supposed to look like. And it's really so boring. Why would we all want to look the same? Look at the 3 of us. We're 3 women. We look completely different. And that's exciting to me. We don't need to look like carbon copies of each other. And yet you walk around Los Angeles and with all the Botox and the fake this and that, and people having their, their chin lifted up behind their ears, you would think, what is the goal here, is to be the same? It's
a lot of it starts early, right? Because when I was in high school, everybody had straight, long blonde hair. It was LA, of course.
Right.
But, I wanted to iron my hair and make it, I did.
Some women did that.
I too I wear my hair straight and curly. But I mean, this is my natural. I call this my Justafarian look. So a lot of going on here today.
Yeah.
Big hair.
What's the name of the show that you do around Hanukkah time?
Oh, Chopstick.
Yes,
we do Chopstick. It's on Christmas Eve, and it's for Jews and pagans. It's at a Chinese restaurant with all Jewish comedians, and it's for Jews and pagans who are all dressed up with no place to go. And I present in Tasty Words, my spoken word series that I do. We're in our 12th year now, and every month we present a different theme. I would encourage all of your viewers and listeners to come and visit us.
Tell people how they can find out about it.
They can go to wendyhammers.com and click on Tasty Words, and the schedule for the year is up there. And can I brag about who we have on our next show?
Yes, please do, because I'm going to be there with an entourage.
Fabulous Susan
next
Levin,
week.
live and in person. Though that's enough of a celeb right there. But we have wonderful actor Stephen Tobolowsky, who you'll recognize from a million shows, Glee and 24, and was in Groundhog Day. He played Ned Ryerson, the insurance guy, and you'll know him when you see him. And then Annie Korsen, who was Doris Klumpus on Seinfeld. I mean, these are fantastic actors who are also really gifted storytellers. At the end of the day, like it's all about the story. You've got to have the compelling thing that makes people want to follow along, get involved in your world.
And what's the theme for that night? We didn't say.
Oh, well, this month is Random Acts of Kindness. Last month was I'm Too Sexy for My Shirt. In May, we're doing Baby You Can Drive My Car. They're all fabulous. And there are more performers I'm not even mentioning, but Suzanne Wong, a fantastic performer. I mean, they're all really great. I encourage you to come on the 11th.
Yeah.
And I also want to welcome all of your listeners who are speakers to submit stories for consideration, because I'm always looking for performers.
That's great.
Writer performers, and all they have to do is go to the website and they can submit stuff there.
Great. What exactly do they have to do? It'll explain on the website how to.
We're looking for between 1,000 and 1,200 words, about 8 minutes in performance. They have to be true or mostly true stories, hilarious and horrifying. You don't have to be funny, but funny works well. But I have stories that are not funny. We're doing a gratitude show in the fall. We've done Mother's Day. We've done every theme you can think of.
And they'll be performing these,
they
right?
They read them out loud. They don't have to be memorized.
Oh, okay.
And they're reading them. Cindy Shupak, who created Sex and the City, is on the show, on the Random Act show. Just all these wonderful stories.
Now, you said you had a publishing story about how you got your first book deal.
Well, yeah. And again, a lot of the people you work with are either published or in the process of learning that. And the one thing you can guarantee in the publishing business is that you can't guarantee anything. Everything is a mystery, and things change as quickly as the business is completely changing. So I was fortunate enough to get a book deal with a dear friend of mine, Elisa Trollin Owen. We wrote a book together. It was called You've Got Meal. It was a How Not to Diet book, a humorous take on dieting.
MEAL.
And it was all a series of emails back and forth over the course of a year between two real-life friends. And it was part of a series of books called E-Musings. Anyhow, we got the book deal. We got paid to do the book. We wrote the book. And then the publicist, let me get this right, the publishing house and the manager had a fight.
Oh, that sounds typical.
Good timing, right? Books written, ready to go.
Not good.
And they said, no, we're going to kill the deal. And then somehow the manager saved the deal and got our book to a European company. So they published 10,000 copies of a book in French. So
that was great to promote, wasn't it?
Though.
I'm published, but let me tell you something. I've got a book sitting on my coffee table that I wrote that I can't read.
Yeah.
I mean, how crazy is that?
And not many people can say that, right?
No, I guess not. And it was called You've Got Meal, so now it's tumerachim.com, allmydiets.com. But in any language, it's funny, I hope.
I also noticed, though, that you did get a deal with St. Martin's Press, right?
I did. I've been featured in a couple anthologies. It was a book called What Was I Thinking? 58 Bad Boyfriend Stories, a fantastic book that New Line actually picked up the idea. They want to make a movie out of it. And then I was in there, and I also did another one called, my goodness, what is it called?
Let's see.
Okay.
We'll try to help you out here.
It's called That Time of the Month, and it's all women's stories, funny stories.
That's
that one. And then I've been published many times, and I've been a Huffington Post contributor and lots of other places. But I want to say, I can't say enough about the live storytelling aspect in terms of developing your material.
Yeah, talk about that.
The audience doesn't lie. And you get in a room and you go, wow, I said that in 20 words. I really could have said it in 6. But you don't know it until you hear it reverberating off either a receiving, loving audience, or you can feel the sort of like where the energy falls out of the room. So, for example, Cindy Shupak, who has this new book coming out, I was reading an article where she's talking about how she'll take different parts of her stories and bring them to different story salons around town and perform them and learn. And same thing, Carol Leifer, the comedian Carol Leifer, when she developed her book, she did Tasty Words probably 10 times and would bring a different chapter every time. And that's how she developed
love
her
it.
book.
To be a comedian, though, you have to have a tough skin, right? I mean, when you get out, how did you first get out in front of an audience? What was that like?
Well, let's see. I'm 52 years old. I've been doing stand-up since I'm 21. So that's over 30 years. Yeah, I know, and I'm still standing. Well, I thank you, false applause. I love that little big hand applause. The cats of thousands
so
are coming out of the ceiling. Fabulous. Hey, comics, we'll take applause and laughs any way we can get it. I always knew that I liked being in front of people and communicating. I knew that I liked creating community by way of theatrical.
So if you didn't go over, if they didn't laugh,
right,
then was it because you loved being out there? Is that what kept you? Yeah, what kept you going?
That's a great question. I would say you get laughs initially. And that's what sort of, that's like the crack, the creative crack that you go, oh my God, I need more. The first time I did stand up, the first time I did stand up, I was completely clueless and fearless. I was 21 years old and I did really well. And that's probably why I came back. I probably did really badly the next 100 times, but that first time kept me coming back. And
you were too young and dumb to know that.
Exactly. It is so true. But I do know that you're not a stand-up comic until you've died a terrible death in front of an audience. That's the rite of passage.
Wow.
I remember once being in New York doing a terrible show at Comedy U Grand in Soho, getting into a cab and crying because I felt so bad. And the cab driver said, "Oh, what happened?" And I'm crying so he can barely understand me. I'm like, I bombed. He goes, "Oh, the guy broke up with you." I'm like, "No, the audience hated me. The guy hates you." Like he kept trying to figure out where I was crying. Couldn't figure out. I said, "The audience. They didn't laugh at my jokes." So
that's great.
But you survived it.
Well, we have to bring you back another time, and I would love for you to tell the story about how you met your husband.
Well, they can come see Ripe and see the story in Ripe.
Right, and it's in Ripe also. But you talked to us before the show because Susie Pruden, our friend, had PK Odell on the show, and she's a feng shui person, and you told us.
My feng shui friend said, "Move your couch and it'll change your life." 6 days later, I met the love of my life.
Right.
So now I move any furniture anywhere she tells me. I've got lamps in my car. I've got a refrigerator in the backyard. I don't whatever she says.
And I don't have a couch to move. So what do I do?
Move it. You have to move it in the wrong spot.
She doesn't have a couch.
Move it again.
Yeah, I got to buy a couch first, and then I got to put it in the wrong place, and then I got to move it.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
Report back to me. I want to hear.
You can borrow one of my couches.
Oh, okay.
I have lots of futons.
Just when it works, invite me to the wedding, okay?
I'll let you know.
That would be fabulous. And that's all from Deborah Kagan. And also the other part of your story was on Ripe that you talk about how he wanted to sell you a car. You were looking for a certain car.
I was looking for a husband for 4 years, except for one day I was looking for a car, and that's how I met my husband.
Yeah,
he sold me a car, and I basically, I saved $100 a month, got a lease, and a great lease, leather seats, and a husband. Beat that, Honda. That's quite a deal.
Yeah, that's a fabulous story. So we've been talking to Wendy Hammers here, wendyhammers.com. And if you'd like to come to her show, Tasty Words in LA, go to her website. You can purchase tickets there. They're not $100. No. It's very, very reasonable.
And it comes with cookies and milk. You can't beat that.
That's right.
Really good ones.
Yeah, and you can meet me
and
Wendy there.
Yeah, it's fabulous. Get Susie. Yeah,
just ask where Susan Levin is, or maybe you'll recognize me and say hello. I mean, the shows are fabulous. At the very least, get onto her email list.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if they want to bring Ripe to a city near them, they can go to ripetheplay.com.
Oh, that's right.
And my booking agent will be happy to talk to them about that. We're taking it everywhere, so excited.
Yeah, I think it would be great in schools and colleges. I just fabulous. And then a conversation after Ripe.
Yeah.
And how the play is how long?
An hour and 2 minutes.
An hour, 2 minutes. It is just so wonderful. You'll laugh and have a wonderful time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being on
my
the
pleasure.
show. It looks like we're going to a break right now, and you're getting a lot of false applause.
Applause.
So we're taking a short break, and we're at LATalkLive.com, and we will be back in a few minutes with Devin Hughes, who's a speaker and an author. And LA Talk Live is more than talk radio. Thank you.
Hi, this is Dawn Christie inviting you to join me every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, for my all-new show, The Dawn Christie Show. Join me as I discuss love, spiritual readings, your purpose, why am I born, what am I here to do. So don't forget to tune in, The Dawn Christie Show at 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on LA Talk Live, You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV, reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hello, I'm Joel Ramirez
And I'm Lolita Robinson Coppage, and welcome to Joy in My House
on LATalkLive.com. Inspirational radio
with a touch of recovery.
A reality show where nothing is left unsaid
And no one is insignificant who says it.
Exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Today is my
Hi, we're coming back to you at Talk Up Your Biz, Speak Your Way to More Profits, and we're at LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk. And we welcome you back, and we should have our next guest on the phone, hopefully. Devin Hughes. Are you with us, Devin?
I am indeed.
Okay, I can't hear you too well. Okay, I can hear you well. Says Nez.
That's better.
Yeah, thank you. So let me introduce you, Devin. I'm glad this worked out for you. Devin is one of our speakers at Speaker Services, and he's an author. And his book is called Contrast, A Biracial Man's Journey to Desegregate. And his past isn't a book about race. It's a book about acceptance, perseverance, and love. And as a speaker and a coach, coach, and author, he's a former college basketball player, and he works with a variety of organizations, teams, and individuals who have a desire to break down cultural barriers and make communication easier through greater self-awareness and understanding to each other.
Hi, Devin. This is Jean-Noel Bassior, and I have a question for you about your book. You say you grew up in a mixed household, right?
Correct.
And so your father was black, your mother was white, right?
Yes.
And I was interested in what you said in the release that you gave us, that it was mixed and it was also mixed up, right? It wasn't a normal environment, and that kind of challenged you, didn't it?
Yes, certainly. My parents were both addicted to drugs. Drugs and alcohol. I was diagnosed with dyslexia, domestic violence, and a litany of other dysfunctional type situations that I experienced as a kid.
So you were facing a lot of different problems, right?
Say it one more time.
You were facing a lot of different problems. It wasn't just the mixed race environment, right? To deal with. Seems like you were bullied at school and.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Both of my parents were.
I think we're cutting out on the Skype here. No?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're trying to get Devin back on Skype here. I think we just lost.
He's on the phone.
The signal.
Gene, I can hear you.
Okay, I couldn't hear you. Sorry. I can't hear you on my headphones. Yeah. Sorry. So tell us about, how did you deal? What were the challenges you were dealing with, and what was going on?
So a couple things, and I'll be brief. Although I am mixed, I don't look mixed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you looked at me just on my skin tone, for all intents and purposes, people thought I was white.
I see.
So the challenge, the looks, the stares, the judgment, trying to fit in, it's like going to a football team and not knowing what jersey to put on. You grew up in a black neighborhood, but you look white. So those are some of the challenges that I was dealing with as a child.
And you say you felt black, right?
Yeah, I felt black. I grew up in a black neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct, but I didn't look black. My hair was straight. My color of my skin looked visibly white. So yeah, that was pretty challenging at times.
But you did have some experiencing with bullying, I believe, because that's what you talk about one of your talks, right?
Yes, it is. So, bullying is a passion of mine. I was both a bully and had been bullied.
Oh,
Uh,
both ways you went.
so, um, so yeah, so I'll elaborate on that. So, a couple things. When you grow up angry and isolated and disconnected, and you don't have anyone to talk to, like I did, what do? You act out. And so, what I did is I would systematically go around and try to find kids, and I would bully them
Mm-hmm.
and punish them. I didn't do it traditional style. I didn't beat kids up. I did it with words. I'd look for anything that I could find, where they lived or dressed or drove or their parents, and would just viciously go at kids. And so that's why it's so passionate topic for me to give back now.
Right. And it's so important because we were talking earlier, I don't know if you were listening on the show, about being newsworthy. And that's what the reporters want to hear, and that's what the event people want to hear. What's newsworthy, and how can you help people in the news these days, and even to the point where some of the young people are killing themselves because of the bullying. And I'm sure that's what you want to prevent.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a great point, Susan. But I actually disagree with a lot of what's going on here domestically with the bullying issue.
Okay.
I think we're treating the symptoms, but not the disease. So first of all, we label and ostracize the bully. We make him go to another corner, and we call him a bad person, and do something like that. Well, I was that guy. There's a genesis for the behavior, so we need to find a little bit more about that. And the other thing I think that we could do a lot more here in this country, and which is what I talk about, is that we bring these guys who come in and we get them all razzed up and we do a bullying program for an hour or two, but that's not how you change human behavior. We need to start baking some of these social skills into the curriculum at schools and make that just as important as learning algebra and geometry. Getting kids to talk with other kids who don't look like them or live in the same zip code as them, and bake that into the curriculum, because these social skills, in my opinion, will be as important as computer skills in the 21st century.
Oh, right on.
That's a great idea. So you would actually start these programs in schools and get kids talking to each other from different environments, different backgrounds, right?
Yeah, because before you start break down these barriers, so when they're 5, 6, 7 years old, you get kids to start to mix and figure out, to kind of demystify this whole race thing, and this gender thing, and this class thing. So if I can laugh with you, then I can play with you. Then all the other stuff is static. In essence, give the kids some kind of emotional bulletproof vent, so to break down these barriers before they get jaded when they're 14, 15, because we're starting way, way too late, because we're treating the symptoms when he's ninth or 10th grade, when we should really be starting when they're 5, 6, 7, and 8, and that's when it really can make a big difference.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that's what they've done with the churches and the synagogues and the Mormons and so on, where they bring people together like that. That's more adult. But have you had any success creating any of those programs yet?
I have. I actually have a program that's. I wish I could share it with you today. It's really, really early. I'd love to come back.
Okay.
But I have a really, really exciting project that I'm about to launch here in the next 30 to 60 days on this topic, and it's going to be a way of healing, so to speak, for bullies like me, to kind of give back and say sorry. And I firmly believe that to let it go, you have to let it out. And I'm creating an initiative right now that I think is going to be really significant to do that.
I love what you're doing. We watched you from the very beginning when you wanted to step out, and you've come such a long way. And we're so happy that you are out there speaking. And I just want to say to folks, if you want to learn more about what Devin's doing, go to his website, DevinChughes.com. Make sure you put the C in there, because there's another Devin Hughes who gets Devin's email, and I found that out early on. So it's DevinChughes.com.
And I have a question, Devin. I know with kids, they're getting a lot of messages from parents, right, from their peers. So if these programs were in schools, do you think in most cases would that be enough to overcome the other messages they're getting? Like say they are in a household where they're learning some, kind of hatred and bad stuff there.
Yeah, that's certainly tough, right? So if you have a school or a teacher, someone who steps up and does the right thing, but at home they're not getting that air cover. Yeah, I think that's certainly a challenge, but I think um, there's no silver bullet or perfect solution. But I think the more we can start earlier and get people or kids to start to question, but to break down some of these challenges. I mean, I grew up struggling to fit in, so I know what that's like. And so anything that we can do to arm kids emotionally to deal with some of these issues is a good thing. And I'll just say this. I created a comic book called Self-Talk.
Oh, that's
And
right.
it's around the power of positive self-talk, that inner voice that we all have that tells us either we're not good enough or worthy or smart enough. And I think if we can get kids starting to channel those voices inside our head and make them say that I can versus I can't, that'll go a long way.
So I want to ask you, I know you have 2 daughters, is that true? Twins?
I have 4 now, Susan.
4 kids, okay. So what is it like in your family, and how do you teach them?
So it's actually funny. I created a workbook for this comic, and not to necessarily keep pushing the comic, but
yeah, that's how
so
they
what
relate.
I do with my kids is I have them journal, and so when they have negative thoughts each week, they write down the most pervasive negative thoughts they've had that week, and then we discover and we talk about it. So my mother said over and over, Susan, that sunshine is the best disinfectant. And so I systematically sit down, my wife and I, with my kids, and we examine what they're thinking about. What's going on in your head? And then we try to channel those thoughts and make them positive thoughts, and try to flip them around and get them in a more positive state. Again, not to run away, but to move forward. Because I firmly believe that the only time we grow as human beings when you're uncomfortable. So I think those are teaching moments.
And you and your wife take the time to do that. It takes time, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, my wife's an educator as well, so it's part of her DNA. But yeah, systematically we do make it a part of our weekly. I'll just call it not curriculum, but as far as our agenda, so to speak.
So this is I want to ask you, do you work with parents and families individually, coaching them on this process if they are in a similar situation?
I have not done a lot of that yet. I mean, I do at certain programs. I'll get an opportunity to talk to parents during or after, sometimes before. But individual coaching sessions, I have not. It's not been an area that I have touched on yet.
You talked about the isolation syndrome early on. I remember a couple of years ago when you first were listed with Speaker Services. We wrote about that. Are you still? Is that still a factor? How does that play into all of this? And what does that mean?
Yeah, so it's still a big part of what I talk about. That at certain points in all of our lives, right, we feel a little bit different or odd or isolated or feel like we don't fit in. And so I just put some sunshine on that and talk about that from my experiences of what it was like, and then my ability to climb out of the mud, so to speak, and feel whole. And that was kind of the genesis for the book. I never felt whole. I felt like I was pretending. I was trying to be what everyone else wanted me to be. I was never black enough nor white enough. And now I'm just me, and that's a really, really good place to be.
Yeah.
So I talk a lot about that.
So what turned it around for you? How did you get to that place?
That's a good question.
Well, I wish, it took me a while. It took me about 40 years systematically to get there until I just, a few years ago, actually around the time I met Susan, and I was interested in the speaking business, and that was kind of the genesis for me taking a deep dive inside and really feeling like I wasn't happy. I felt like I had more music in me that needed to be played. And Susan was happy enough to kind of demystify the speaking business, which gave me an opportunity to take a deep dive look inside, but also share my story with others. And the more I shared it and had a platform, the more I began to grow as an individual. And so to answer your question specifically, I just began to reach out, chronicle my thoughts, journal, write, speak, reach across the aisle, talk to a variety of different folks that I admired. And part of that process, there was some healing involved.
So it sounds like you found your voice.
Absolutely. I did indeed.
And so you spoke first, and you started speaking locally in your area. You're based in San Diego for free. And then the book came as a result of the speaking or thereafter, right?
Yeah, the book came after the speaking. That's correct because, like a lot of speakers, and if there's some on the phone,
Yeah.
right? We're all wondering how you get started. How do
Right.
you? We have a story to tell, and we want to get started. And I was the same way. So I took your advice, Susan, and I looked for every opportunity that I could that there was a microphone and a stage, or there was a Rotary Club or a school assembly, and I practiced the craft, and I got my message out. And the more I did it, the more I got better and better. But I also had people coming up to me saying, "Wow, that was a really powerful story. That really made a difference." Because I know someone, or I'm that guy too. And little anecdotes like that just fueled the fire and just pushed me harder and harder, which made me want to write the book and do more of it.
And I know that you speak on a couple other topics for those of you who are interested in booking Devin. He talks about the attitude of a champion, and he talks about Let's Talk Diversity, and Confessions of a Bully is another one of his programs. And of course, he integrates his book, I'm sure, into each one of these talks. Who are your best fit audiences, Devin? Who would want to hear your message?
So I speak to a variety of different groups. I do
Uh-huh.
I do associations. I do meetings. I do a lot of keynotes. People know me as the chief inspiration officer, so
That's
I
right.
certainly can and get folks fired up and like. But I also do a lot of corporate work around diversity.
Yeah, let's talk
Uh,
about that. Yeah, that's important.
yeah, so I'll go into an organization, whether it's 500 or 5,000, where we have a variety of different groups and ethnicities and genders, but we know we have issues, but no one really wants to talk about those issues. We know we've got problems, so I systematically come in and put some sunshine on that and bring some groups together and break down some of these barriers so we can get people start connecting, talking, and communicating and increase productivity within the workplace.
So in the workplace, what is one or two tips that you offer when you're speaking to corporations and people who are having issues like that?
Well, it's funny. In your last guest, or actually before your last guest, I was listening to the show, and you said something that I think you were talking about, kind of the breakdown of a speech, and you mentioned an
Uh-huh.
activity. One of the first things that I do is
That
a
was me.
stereotype activity.
Uh-huh.
So we identify stereotypes. So I get people moving right away, and we get people actively involved, and we start talking about stereotypes for all the different stereotypes that are out there, silly and goofy, and some not so much. So I don't make this the traditional diversity talk. I want to talk about real hard stuff. I want to talk
Right.
about the stuff that everyone thinks about but no one talks about, like in the news right now with this gay marriage thing, lesbian, some of those issues, and black and white and gender and Spanish and Mexican and all that stuff. So if you go to my talk, it's real. It's provocative, and we get people moving and talking and communicating, and get people doing activities and stuff where you have to talk to someone who you may never have talked to, who just grew up in the Watts and you grew up in Beverly Hills and you have absolutely nothing in common, but I put you together and make you come out of something at the end of it.
Yeah, that's perfect when they get involved. A lot of people can't even look at anybody in the eye, more or less talk to them. So that's really, being out there and fearless. Do you find people have resistance to it?
I think usually the first reaction that I get is, wow, I had no idea it was going to be like this.
You don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah, because I think they use it to kind of, the traditional talk, the kind of talking head, and just say, hey, everyone needs to get along and all that. And well, that's great. There's room for that, but there's no PowerPoint in my talks. I'm
Good.
up on stage and I'm into it, and we're gonna roll our sleeves up, and we're actually gonna get to work here.
So you really involve the audience, right?
Absolutely, the audience is barely sitting down, as little as possible in a talk that I have.
And so that was me Jean-Noel and I were bantering earlier, and we were saying it was so important to involve the audience and that they'll remember about 1,000 times more than if you're a talking head. So that's one of the points that you've learned, as you went along. You tell a story and then you involve the audience. And it's so important to do that. And people forget to do that, to make it interactive. It certainly anchors the point that you're making and so much more.
Well, and it's also so much more fun for me and other speakers, right? Because we're involved, and there's a connection, an emotional connection between the audience and the speaker. And so, the folks that I look at and had admired when I got into this business were the folks who were doing it the same way, and the programs that I came away with were the ones that I was actually doing something. See, I found, guys, that information by itself is not transformation.
Oh, that's a good
right?
point. Mm-hmm.
if it was that easy, right, you just hand someone a sheet of paper with a diet, right, and they would lose weight. Well, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it?
So just based on that theme, information is not transformation. If you come to one of my programs, expect to move around a little bit. Expect to get off your seat. Expect to talk. You may even be up on stage with me with a microphone in hand. Again, I think that those are growth moments.
Absolutely.
And that if I get you a little bit uncomfortable in a good way, you're going to come out of there different than when you walked in.
Well, I absolutely love what you're doing, and all of us are doing our part. We're all experts in our field, and we have so much information to share and move along and just change the world, and I think it's fabulous. I'm so glad that you're part of our Speaker Services family and that you can be spreading the word. And please don't forget to tune in and look at Devin's website at devinhughes.com. Devin C. Hughes at .com. Do you have one parting suggestion or tip for us before we leave you today?
Yeah, well, two things, if I could
yes,
sneak in
you
two.
may
First
do
of all,
too.
Susan, I want to say thank you to you guys.
You're welcome.
I said when I was a neophyte and had no idea what I wanted to do, like a lot of speakers, I knew I had a story to tell and had a lot to say, but really had no idea how to get out there and do it. You were a huge beacon of light for me, so thank you.
Thank you so much. We both appreciate that.
And second, I'd say it begins with a choice, right? I say if you're like me and you're another speaker out there listening and you have a story to tell and you really, really feel like this is what you're meant to be, you're going to scratch around. It's going to feel like trying to find a light switch in a very dark room sometimes. But don't go at it alone. You have Susan, you have Jean, you have a bunch of others. Just pick up the phone, email, text. They can help you. It's there. We need more change agents right now in the world, and you're a small part. If you change one person, you change everything.
We didn't pay him to do that either.
Thank you. Thank you, Devin, and for reminding us all to reach out and get help when we need it. That's so important.
Help is here.
So thank you to Devin C. Hughes and to Wendy Hammers, who was our guest earlier today. And next week, we're going to have Linda L. Smith will join us. She's the founder and president, CEO of one of the first African-American healthcare colleges in the U.S. And Lonnie?
And we're going to have Lonnie Scamby, and he's the entrepreneur's Yoda. He's a business coach, skilled negotiator, and a serial entrepreneur. And he's written that's his book as well, and he'll be joining us through Skype, and Linda will be here in the studio.
So thank you so much for joining us today. This is Talk Up Your Biz, Speak Your Way to More Profits on LA Talk Live, where we are more than just talk.
Good night.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live.